Laura, what do you make of what you've seen so far? I mean, we saw that win for Lorna Slater in Edinburgh. We saw a really good performance there from the Greens coming in second.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this election has been dominated by the cost of living. That's what people have been hearing on the doorstep. That's what people's main concern is about. And a lot of that is linked to issues that the Greens are very vocal about. It's how much petrol is costing at the pump. It's your energy bills. It's even things like food and groceries that is impacted globally by what we've been seeing the last few weeks with this conflict. So I think the Greens are going to be delivering more MSPs than they've ever had before. And part of that will be down to some of their traditional Green messaging around energy, climate, sustainability, but linking that to the cost of living. And of course, Lorna Slater returning as an MSP, but this time as a constituency MSP, will be very encouraging for them. But I do think, you know, it speaks to a big topic that has been across all of the parties, which has been this idea of energy and cost of living and the various messaging across the parties. Some of it has been strong and has led people to select who to vote for. Others times it's been confusing and has left people going, I don't know who to vote for. And that's why we're maybe seeing some of the lower turnouts in some areas as well, where we would expect more.
I mean, I totally agree with you, Laura. I think the cost of living and energy issues are so important to most voters. But the problem with the Scottish Greens is that when they actually get into the Parliament, they tend to put their energies into identity politics rather than actually furthering the issues and the reasons why people vote for them. And they've had some very intolerant positions towards women like me, lesbian, gay and bisexual people who don't buy their identity politics. I'd like to see the Scottish Greens put that aside and focus on issues like the cost of living and the energy crisis. But frankly, I'll be surprised if they do.
Wendy, you were nodding along at the start there.
Yeah, I think cost of living is something that has come up consistently because it really is difficult for people. And when I think about a constituency such as mine, where Willie Rennie has just been returned in a large part of that, you know, it's cost of living in relation to energy and fuel, but also the fact that public services are not what they once were, particularly around local transport, etc. So all those different factors add up to make things very difficult for people in their day-to-day lives.
OK, thank you all very much for the moment. And we'll go back now to Martin in Glasgow.
Rebecca, thank you.
Joanna, we've been sitting kind of listening to all the chat about independence, another independence referendum. If John Swinney does not achieve his majority, what do you think? What would you do? What's the route? What's the most reliable route to getting one?
It looks like we're going to have a pro-independence majority in the Parliament, but it's going to be made up of not just the SNP, it's going to include the Greens. And there's two problems with that. First of all, for reasons I do not understand, John Swinney and the SNP have said, and have adopted as their policy, that only an outright SNP majority would be a mandate for a second independence referendum. So, I mean, that was a crazy thing to do. But clearly, in terms of democracy, if there's a pro-independence majority, then that is a mandate. And it's not up to John Swinney to say what is and isn't a mandate. It's a democratic question. But the thing where I think the SNP have gone wrong, and this is where, you know, I fell out with Nicola Sturgeon about this very early on, was perilling everything on the idea that a union between Scotland and England, which is more than 300 years old, can only be brought to an end using a mechanism that arises from the devolution statute, which is only 28 years old. It's a crazy thing to have done, and that's why I feel that Nicola Sturgeon and subsequent SNP leaders have reversed the SNP's independence strategy up a blind alley. We need some out-of-the-box thinking now.
What's that look like? What's out of the box?
Well, I mean, one of the things they need to do is they need to spend less time talking about process and more time talking about the why and the how of independence, so they get support up to a level that makes the push for a second vote irresistible. But they also need to stop talking about a Section 30 mandated referendum as the gold standard. There are other ways, and as Bernard says, it's fundamentally a political question. But the idea that any British government is going to, at the moment, grant a Section 30 order is just for the birds. And if I was setting out an independence strategy, as the Irishman once said, I wouldn't like to be starting from here. The position that we've got ourselves into, or rather the SNP have got us into, is not the best position to be starting from. But on the other hand, an outright independence majority shouldn't be ignored as a matter of democracy. So what I would like to see the SNP doing is really going back to the drawing board and having some more creative thinking about how to achieve their goal. And I would also like to see them governing well. The party hasn't governed well for years. To give Scottish voters the confidence to believe in themselves and to choose independence, the SNP needs to govern well, and it needs to govern well on the sort of bread and butter issues that Laura was talking about earlier.
Do you agree with that they haven't governed
energy?
Well?
I really like what you said about going back to the drawing board, because actually I want to take a step even further back, because the decisions that are made in this building behind us are for the whole of Scotland.
Yes.
But 1 in 2 people that we see have not actually been part of this democratic process. They've not cast a vote, they've been disillusioned, they've been uninterested in independence or anything else, because they don't feel like what's been on offer has been to help them with the cost of living, or to help them with healthcare or schools or whatever it might be that they're passionate about. So I think we can obviously discuss independence, not independence, what would it take to get another referendum or not, but actually, how do we get 1 out of every 2 people that decided to completely opt out of this democratic process to get involved? And, you know, just look at the leaflets that came through your own letterbox. The messaging was all over the place. It was confusing. You know, everybody is saying this is who you should vote for to pip them against, or if you don't want them, this is who you vote for, or we can take this much off your bills. But actually, you know, people just they saw through it, and people didn't turn up yesterday to vote. And I think that's something, you know, we can get so wrapped up in the numbers, and it is really important to congratulate all the, you know, MSPs that are going to come into power and the hard work they've put in. But we also need to look at the massive elephant that's not in the room, that didn't turn up to the ballot box, and actually say that that is something all parties need to go back to the drawing board and say, why are people not interested in voting anymore? How do we get policies in place that people can get?
And we seem to have accepted that turnout for the Scottish Parliament is generally lower than it is for the UK general elections, and we haven't really properly questioned why that is the case or accepted it. I mean, where I agree with Joanna is in relation to we're back into an argument of the process, and I find that incredibly depressing, that it feels like we're going back full circle. And also for me, have we learned nothing from the Brexit referendum, where a really narrow win for one side then takes all before it, and actually what was promised by that side is completely different? What I certainly agree with is that we need to see better governance here at Westminster. Here at Holyrood. Sorry, I'm thinking of my MP hat on. But, you know, as you say, actually, the reason why we need that is because then that's actually how you re-engage the electorate with politics overall.
Okay, Wendy Chamberlain, Laura Anderson and Joanna Cherry, thank you so much for your time. It's back to the studio with Martin.